Welcome to Infinitely Irrational, where we discuss the real, eccentric, and complex history of mathematics.
Brought to you by Mathematical Expressions.
I'm your host, Natalie, the resident math nerd.
And I'm Kay, your researcher of weird things.
In this episode, we'll answer the following questions. How can you ensure your book never goes out of print? Do you always have to play by the rules of the game? What do either of these have to do with math? Let's find out. Welcome back. So last time we talked a little bit about Euclid, the idea of Euclid, and some geometry. And again, we have our special guest, Dr. Anthony Carreras, to continue digging into some of the philosophy.
All right, we're back. So, the elements. So this was the first text to combine and order the current mathematical knowledge of the day, right? So Euclid is not creating anything radically new as far as the individual pieces of mathematical knowledge. He's taking stuff that was already known, and he's putting it all together, and he's showing how things can be proven.
Nice.
Okay? Yeah, so it was widely used as a math textbook. And some author who said it's second only to the Bible in its longevity and influence, has nearly 1,000 editions.
So, question, is there like a King James version?
I don't know, but every hotel should have one. Yeah. No, seriously. I mean, like, every hotel should have a Bible and the elements.
Yes, I am here for that.
Yeah.
So let's chat about what it really is. First of all, it's not really a book.
I guess it depends what you mean by book. We'll talk about defining what is a book. But, well, it's a set of 13 scrolls of parchment, right? And it was when it was first recorded.
Okay, so you know what I'm going to imagine?
Tell me.
I am going to imagine that they're tied up with really fancy, maroon ribbon. You know, when you go to Papyrus or some stationery store and you find this parchment and it's beautiful. That's how I'm gonna imagine the elements. So in your hotel room drawer, right? You've got
right,
the Bible.
It's a scroll.
You've got
yeah, wrapped up in the ribbon. I like that.
Correct,
I like that.
correct.
All right, cool. We'll go with that. So we don't have the original first 2 to 4. Well, depending on what source you're looking at, what scholar you're looking at here.
To it, it's believed that we actually have an edition that's written by Hippocrates. And I need to clarify
the
here.
physician?
Not the physician. I'm glad you said that. The Pythagorean, because again, apparently Hippocrates
so not
also,
the Hippocratic Oath
right?
Guy. Yeah,
but Hippocrates also made the list of top 10 names. So we've got, what do we have? Pythagoras, Euclid, Aristophanes, Hippocrates, Plato, Aristotle. We're at 6. Maybe we'll find the other 4.
I'm bringing Thales back if I ever have another child, but I won't.
It.
So
wait, maybe you could change one of their middle names.
I have 2 girls, and
you're right.
I don't know how they'd feel after the fact now about getting a middle name called Thales. We'll see.
They're not okay with that. They
Probably
would not be.
Yeah.
Your youngest, she might be okay. You might be able to sway her if you can convince her. She's amazing.
Yeah, well, I mean, if she doesn't like it, she'll just punch me. So that's probably what she would do.
Hilarious.
All right, so we've seen in ancient times, there's this practice of attributing works to famous people,
right?
Except in the case of Descartes and Fermat, perhaps.
Feel that,
right? So some versions have a 14th and a 15th book, right? So it's all kinds of sort of crazy stuff going on with them.
I guess this is how you could ensure that your book never goes out of print, that your publisher always comes up with new editions. It's kind of like Harry Potter. And so Kay always tells me I need to quit talking about Harry Potter, but she's not here, so I can talk about it. Where, they just came out with the Jim Kay illustrated editions. And so even if you had the originals, you're like, well, okay, now I got to have the illustrated. And then they added another edition with the house books. So you've got I got Kay for her birthday, the for both of us, the Slytherin edition of the Harry Potter books. But, some collectors will want the Gryffindor and the Ravenclaw and the Hufflepuff and the Slytherin to have the full collection.
Were you sorted into Slytherin?
You know I was. Come on, cunning, ambitious by any means necessary. Oh, man, come on now.
Yeah.
Come on now.
Did you know that the first book in the Harry Potter series was actually called Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone?
That is, you think I don't know? Come on now. Come on, son.
Yeah. And how did philosophers become sorcerers?
Well, actually, I'll tell you, because it is like a huge thing in the fandom. So when she got it published in the UK, it was Philosopher's Stone for the obvious reason that it is the Philosopher's Stone.
Yeah.
When it came over to an American audience, they felt that we wouldn't resonate with it being...
Because the British are so much smarter than us? Is that it?
So, I don't know, dude. I don't know. But it was a huge thing. But so here's what's interesting. With the new... Bloomsbury is the publisher. With the new Slytherin... the House editions, I'm sorry, for those of you people that aren't in Slytherin. But the new House editions, they actually printed the Philosopher's Stone. And so you can purchase now the Philosopher's Stone. And it's actually really cool because it's got slightly different verbiage. It's actually the UK edition.
I want that version.
You should get that. It's really cool, especially with the house books, because it's got all the little, like it'll tell you about Slytherin House, or it'll tell you about Salazar Slytherin, or whoever, whatever house you buy. So it's really cool.
Is Euclid ever mentioned in Harry Potter? He should be.
No, I don't think so.
You need to know math in order to be good at magic, for sure.
Well, arithmancy.
Yeah, there you go.
Also, I'm sure Sybil Trelawney had to know a little bit of math, probably.
If there was a math test, you know that Hermione got an A on it.
You know that's right.
All right, so where are we here? So Euclid, right? The elements, it's copied over and over. There's errors and variations, and because of the lack of a printing press, there's all kinds of edits being made. We talked about how Theon, Hypatia's father, made a very specific edit in one version of it, trying to improve upon it. And whatever the case may be, Euclid is the sort of the poster boy for geometry. Even though the Elements doesn't contain any like brand new math at the time, he systematizes things. He's got these axioms, definitions, postulates. And with these axioms, definitions, and postulates, he just shows how all this other stuff can be proven from it.
And, so you're using some math words.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that. And we're going to loosen it up a little bit because, Kay would be so upset if she thought that we use too much math. But we'll loosen it up a little bit. Yeah. But
don't come after me, Twitter.
But we're using geometry very loosely here. In the last episode, we talked about how it was basically just an unmarked straight edge and two compasses, as they say. But that's what's called Euclidean geometry.
Right.
And so there are other geometries that I'll talk about in a little bit, because of course there are. But in their time, we talked about two compasses and a straight edge. They just used whatever tool they had available.
Yeah, yeah.
You just said that Euclid compiled all this knowledge.
Yep.
I kind of feel like he's like the Grimms or Homer, where it's like, Euclid's fairy tales, aka the Elements,
right,
where he's just compiled all the stories so that other people can read it, or all the definitions or whatever it is.
Yeah, maybe he saw himself as something like that, or if Euclid was just the name of a group, maybe the group saw themselves like
Why
this.
Why does that make me feel like it's a band, the Euclids?
Euclid would be a great name for a band.
But too, with respect to the Elements, it's basically just geometry for dummies.
Some smart dummies.
He's had 15 years or however many you need to get into the academy. Yeah. But he really did try to make, in the Elements, tried to make it accessible to all. Like, he wanted math to be accessible.
Yes.
And I love, too, just as I was actually reading some of the Elements, he makes this relationship between geometry, which is really very visual if you think about it, circles and things like that, triangles and squares and rectangles. But he makes this relationship between the very visible geometry and the tactile, I think, arguably geometry and algebra.
Yes.
And if you think about it, there's a geometric representation of the Pythagorean theorem. It's actually a GIF or GIF if you feel so compelled.
I haven't seen that.
But yeah, it's really cool where like water moves from the squares into the triangles into the square, so you can see how it works. It's really cool.
Very nice.
But it's really nice to see how he made this, how the relationship is between these two different same subject.
Yeah, it's also been said to have geometry that has the same relationship to math as the alphabet has to language.
That's cool. I like that.
Yeah, it's interesting little
See,
analogy.
you are classing up the joint.
Yeah. Oh man, I didn't expect to do that, but interesting little analogy, right? The alphabet, right, is sort of like the building blocks of like the most basic elements of language, right? And you maybe think of it that way. And geometry having to deal with the sort of basic elements and building blocks of mathematics.
Yeah. I like that. You talked a little about axioms, postulates,
yes.
and I'm going to throw in some lemma, corollary, theorem, mathy words, wahaha. And I'm so excited
we do mathy words on this, right? Yeah. This is my first time here, people. Yeah.
Yes, a math podcast. Okay. So Kay's in the stacks right now, so I get to get away with being.
She is.
She is.
Oh.
I get to get away with being a little more mathy. But don't worry, guys. I promise it won't get too bad.
In Alexandria, the elements was first imagined on antediluvian scrolls of parchment. We've recreated the events of each story in precise detail in the hopes that someone, somewhere, knows the truth. Witnesses say these mathematical proofs can be easily seen, but there are over 1,000 different accounts. You may be able to assist in cracking a baffling theorem. Help the Federal Bureau of Mathematics investigators solve them on an all-new Mathematical Mysteries this Wednesday. The toughest proofs, the most conflicting stories. If you've seen these lemmas or corollaries, call our hotline now.
So, Kay and I love playing board games. Shout out to Betrayal at House on the Hill. That's kind of our favorite right now. But essentially, like, we talk about axioms, and you're going to get into this a little bit.
Yeah.
But you can think about axioms as the rules of the game. And when I say rules, I'm not talking house rules. I am talking, this is the rule book that is blessed. And so you can't, like...
You have to take them as a given.
Exactly.
Right? You can't. You go questioning the rules, and it's like, why are you playing the game?
Correct.
Because that's what the game is.
Exactly correct. Yeah. And so if you want to play whatever particular game, you got to play by the rules.
Yeah.
So if you don't, you're welcome to play a different game. No one's telling you, like, you have to play this one, but it just won't be the one defined by these rules.
Right.
For example, if you've got a deck of cards, right? Like, I'm going to pull out this deck of cards and we're going to play a game. If I'm playing by the rules of hearts and you're playing by the rules of spades, what are we even doing?
We're not playing a game together. That's
correct.
For sure. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. But which is more true? Which rules are more true, hearts or spades?
Oh, again, classing up the joint.
But so I mean, that's like because I think the axioms Euclid would say they're true. They're always true. You can't not play that game.
Yeah.
Right? It's everywhere. Math's everywhere. Right.
Yeah.
Math's part of reality. Can't escape it.
And you got you got to start somewhere. Yeah, you're right.
All right, so yes, the axioms they're really crucial because they're the foundation of everything. Everything begins with the axioms. Anything we know when it comes to geometry, in Euclidean geometry, everything we know is either an axiom itself, in which case it's just sort of it's self-evidently true.
You're playing by these rules,
right? It's self-evidently true, right? Things that are equal to the same thing are equal to each other, as an example of one of them. So everything we know is either an axiom itself, like that, or it's derived from an axiom, right? Deduction, logic. We show what follows from these things.
Which you just talked about. It was the building blocks of math.
But so another interesting thing about the elements, there's no introduction or preface. He just jumps right into his list of 23 definitions, and then the axioms and the postulates.
I
love it.
This is another reason.
Cut to the chase.
Yes, I love mathematicians for this. So in my previous life, before I was a math professor, I used to supervise a tutoring center.
Really?
Yeah, I used to. First, it was just math, but then
it's hard for me to picture you doing anything but math.
Well, while I was doing the math tutoring center, because I was doing math, but then they pulled in and they said, "Will you also supervise the writing center?" So if you think about the disciplines that both of these serve,
very different people.
Correct. And what I found was, in my time in the math lab, I could go to any math instructor and I could say, math instructor X, I need this thing. Like, there was no preamble. It was just thing. Let's solve it. See you later.
There you go.
And then we could hang out and have fun later. But immediately I could just go in and no preamble, just like you're saying with Euclid.
Yeah, because mathematicians are like show me the proof, show me the steps. Boom.
Correct. We're done. Yeah. And if you want to hang out, we'll do that later. Fine. Yeah. But when I moved into the writing lab and I started having to interface with the folks in those disciplines, I found that the better way to approach them.
They wanted to talk to you.
They did. It was always I always learned new words. Superlative.
I am sure. There you go.
Yeah, that's a fun one.
Improved your vocabulary.
Yeah. But I couldn't go in there and just solve the problem. I needed to have an introduction. I needed to have my, body paragraphs, and I needed to have a conclusion.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. It's funny. Philosophers, a lot of them today are more like mathematicians in this respect, or at least what analytic philosophy, as it's the name that goes under. Like folks in this vein are very much about getting to the point. Like just tell me what your thesis is and give me the argument.
You know what? That's probably why we get along so well.
I think so.
Mm-hmm.
I think so.
Don't waste my time.
Yeah, no. I tell my students in their papers, like if their introductory paragraph has more than 2 sentences, they've written too much.
Man, I feel that. Yeah. I feel that.
So Euclid has these definitions, right? Basic definitions of basic terms like line, point, circle.
Oh, the drawing tools in Word.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah. And as we'll see, it's probably the case that modern rigor, you could say, might not think kindly upon these definitions, right? Might find the assumptions to be inadequate.
So I'll tell you, I will agree with this. The very first time I read how he defined a line, I clutched my pearls because I thought, oh my God, the definition that we have of a line now is so much better. And I think, we have a professor that is, if you dial up rigor to max and then you break the knob, like, the stereo that like blows you out of your chair, like, that rigor is blowing him out of his chair, right? Like that's him with rigor. And I wonder how he would react to Euclid as a student. Like, would he say, "Oh, the proof is inadequate"?
He'd make him do the assignment over.
Fix this. I shan't read it. I shan't. But it's interesting because now we have symbolic geometry and trigonometry, which replaced that original geometry. I think it's really interesting to see how far math has come. By the way, there's a book that this instructor recommended to me, which is amazing. It's called, aptly enough, The Math Book, and it talks about math over time.
That's an elegant title.
Isn't it, though? Yeah. It's really cool. It's got one page that is kind of a short description of whatever the concept is, and then the other page is some art. And it's 250 things that have happened in math over time. It's really great. But it got me thinking, if you think about things like computers, right, or cell phones or whatever, the very first one that was made, like, look at a computer, it was in a whole room.
Yeah. Oh, man, remember what those things used to look like?
Yes, And
remember the Commodore 64? I had one of those.
So I was at an awards ceremony this morning.
Yeah.
And they asked, we had a gentleman who won a 40-year service, or who won it. A 40-year service award. And so what they did for part of this was they asked, but they went and they asked current students, what the world was like 40 years ago. They'd mention stuff to them. They'd ask them, like, how much do you think a house cost? How much do you think this thing cost? And they were like, the Macintosh computer, that's Apple. How much do you think it cost 40 years ago? And they were like, $100. And everybody at my table burst out laughing. They're like, we wish it only cost that much back then. But it's really interesting to think about, like, where they started and how we've been able to build on that to improve it, to make it into this great thing. So
interestingly, later mathematicians like René Descartes, who's also a philosopher, of course, would refine the stuff in the elements over and over, but the primary stuff within it would be unchallenged for a couple thousand years. Man,
that's so cool. But okay, guys. Listeners, I'm going to need you to back me up on this, okay? Because I have a joke that I would like to share.
Oh, man.
I'm so glad that you said that, because you set me up perfectly for this joke.
2,000 years? Couple thousand years?
Yes. Here it is. It's so bad. It's funny, but I'm going to put a laugh track in because it's so good. So here it is. Okay. Now, there's a cartoon, and these two geometers are talking to each other, and they're little shapes. And it says, one of them says, if Euclid were alive today, do you think he would be looked upon as a remarkable person? And the other guy says, are you ready for this?
I'm ready.
Okay, the other guy says, by all means, he would be over 2,000 years old. Yes, I made you laugh. I told you it was so bad, man. It's good.
Oh, boy. Yeah, get that laugh track ready to go. Well, In any case, it is a wonderful book with all its imperfections. One of those rare pieces that was already pretty famous in its own time. And, as we've mentioned, one of the first books they ran once no, we didn't mention this. One of the first books they ran once the printing press was invented.
That's so neat. And it's so cool that art, architecture, math in general, all of this is based on that Euclidean geometry for 100 generations. So next episode, we will explore what was actually written on those magical scrolls. Thanks for joining us for today's episode of Infinitely Irrational. For more fun, the research and math behind this episode, visit us on the web at www.infinitelyirrational.com. This episode was edited by Mathematical Expressions. This episode was written and narrated by Mathematical Expressions and Kay. Research for this episode was compiled by Kay. See you next time!